Imagine being forced into an orgy not for pleasure, but as a political test. You're in a golden palace, eyes everywhere, and your performance tonight decides whether your father lives or dies. In ancient royal courts, sex wasn't private. It was a tool of surveillance, control, and brutality. Royal intimacy wasn't about desire, it was about dominance. You've heard of kings and queens, but what they did behind closed doors makes modern scandals look like bedtime stories. We're about to dive into the weirdest, darkest sexual practices of royal empires, and what you'll learn will stay with you forever. Welcome to the court of Tiberius, the Roman emperor who turned his private villa into a stage for human obedience. On the island of Capri, far from the Senate's reach, Tiberius built a palace not of marble, but of flesh. Known as the Villa of the Fishes, it featured specially designed bathtubs with underwater viewing windows. The emperor would watch boys and girls swim naked beneath him, like living art, like property. But this wasn't just perversion. This was politics. Before a nobleman could be promoted, his children might be summoned to Capri. Tiberius believed a family's loyalty could be measured by their children's obedience in the bedroom. Refusal meant ruin. Participation meant status. Sex became a performance, a ritual of humiliation that secured your bloodline's future. Ancient records tell us Tiberius didn't just observe, he directed. Orgies were organized like ceremonies. Participants were ranked, evaluated, even trained. Those who performed best earned political favor. Those who failed often disappeared. The Roman historian Suetonius recorded shocking details. Toddlers trained to lick the emperor's fingers. Slaves taught to simulate animal sounds during group performances. It wasn't about lust. It was about watching the powerful debase the powerless and rewarding submission with survival. The disturbing part? Other royal empires copied this system. In ancient Persia, King Xerxes kept a rotation of noble-born concubines who were selected based on their willingness to undergo public trials of endurance and shame. Their sexual training was supervised by court priests who recorded reactions in ledgers, not for morality, but for strategy. The weirdest part? These acts were documented like statecraft, an extension of imperial strength. In these empires, the bedroom was not a place of escape. It was a battlefield. And the weapons were obedience, humiliation, and fear. But what if the empire didn't just want your body? What if it wanted your soul? Let's step into the golden cages of the East, where pleasure was punishment and freedom was never an option. Welcome to the imperial harem of the Ottoman Empire, home to over 400 women, none of whom were allowed to speak to the outside world. The harem wasn't a paradise. It was a prison made of velvet and gold. Girls were taken as young as 8, trafficked from Europe, North Africa, and the Caucasus. Once inside Topkapi Palace, their names were erased. They were renamed, numbered, and stripped of identity. Their new purpose? To please one man, the Sultan. But here's what most people don't realize. This wasn't about pleasure, it was about surveillance. Each woman was constantly watched, not just by guards, but by other women. Spying was rewarded. Disobedience was fatal. The weirdest part? The Sultan rarely chose his partners himself. Instead, concubines performed secret night dances, judged not by the Sultan, but by the Queen Mother. She alone decided who was worthy of entering her son's bed. Think about that. Your sexual future was controlled by your lover's mother, and if chosen, the experience didn't end with the night. A concubine who became pregnant was elevated instantly, but if she didn't, she risked demotion, flogging, or worse, forced sterilization to prevent jealousy and rivalry. The worst horror? Silence. Every sexual act had to be performed without sound. The walls were so thin that moans could trigger executions. The Sultan's pleasure had to be complete, but your own had to remain invisible. Women trained for years in the art of sexual stillness. There's a preserved letter from a Circassian concubine who wrote, "We were taught to smile with our eyes only and never gasp, lest someone mistake joy for rebellion." These women weren't lovers. They were human chess pieces moved for power, alliances, and royal bloodlines. Even childbirth was a battlefield. If a concubine bore a son, she could never sleep with the sultan again, lest one child be favored over another. Motherhood was both promotion and exile. Some women tried to resist, some tried to escape. They were sewn into leather sacks and thrown into the Bosphorus at night. No trial, no last words. But even this cruelty was controlled. Executions were scheduled during high tides, so bodies would drift out to sea unseen. You think that's horrifying? Imagine if a king didn't just take your body, but taxed your virginity. That's where we go next. Now imagine this. You've just married the love of your life. It's your wedding night. But instead of being together, a royal guard arrives. You are told the king will sleep with your wife first, and you will wait outside the chamber doors until he's finished. This wasn't myth. It was just prime noctis, the rite of the first night. Enforced across medieval Europe by various lords and kings, this twisted law allowed monarchs to claim the virginity of any peasant bride on her wedding night. It happened in Scotland, France, the Balkans, and sometimes in absolute silence as part of ancient feudal contracts. But here's the weirdest part. Some kings didn't even sleep with the women. They made the husbands watch, forced them to kneel while their wives were taken as a test of loyalty and humiliation. One Scottish baron allegedly invented a ritual where the bride had to present herself wrapped in white linens, like a corpse, symbolizing the death of her innocence as the price of marriage. Some villages fought back. In parts of France, entire communities created virgin taxes, payments to the king to buy back a bride's right to privacy. Can you imagine that? Your father saving money not for your dowry, but to prevent the king from sleeping with you. The records are chilling. In 1352, a village in Burgundy wrote to their monarch, "We offer 300 silver coins in exchange for the untouched chastity of our daughters." And some kings refused. In parts of the Holy Roman Empire, nobles held marriage inspections, where brides had to be physically examined for virginity, performed by male doctors and priests. If signs of deflowering were found, the marriage was dissolved. The bride returned to the king's custody for retraining. These weren't fairy tales. They were legal policies, enforced by royal decree, backed by guards, clergy, and tradition. And if you think that was control, wait until we talk about the final horror, the eunuchs. Men who paid for proximity to power with the price of their own manhood. In the royal palaces of China, India, and the Ottoman Empire, there existed a special class of men who had been unmade, eunuchs. They were the guardians of the harem, the secret keepers of kings, and the eyes of the empire in bedrooms where no other men could enter. But their job came with a price: total bodily sacrifice. In China's Forbidden City, boys as young as 9 were castrated with knives made of bamboo and bronze. No anesthesia, no antibiotics. Many bled to death. But those who survived became part of the emperor's inner circle, allowed to deliver messages, manage royal concubines, and even advise in matters of state. Why were they trusted? Because they could never sire children. No sexual threat, no dynasty of their own. But the weirdest part? Some eunuchs rose to immense power. In Ming China, Zheng He, a castrated slave, became the admiral of the largest naval fleet the world had ever seen. In the Ottoman court, black eunuchs controlled who saw the sultan and who didn't. They carried poison for uncooperative concubines. They oversaw sexual rituals. They dictated royal pregnancies. They were both jailers and confessors. But even among eunuchs, there was hierarchy. Some were only partially castrated. Some were fully. Others were fakes, men who pretended wearing special robes and acting effeminate to sneak into forbidden areas. Their voices were studied, their gait measured, their every move policed. In one Persian court, eunuchs were forced to wear heavy gold chains on their ankles, as a reminder that even though they were near power, they were not free. The letters of a Mughal eunuch named Rahim survive. In one he wrote, I am the ghost in the palace, trusted by all, owned by none. I know who sleeps with whom, and which child belongs to which man. I hold the empire's secrets between legs I no longer have. That is the tragedy of the royal bedroom, where power, politics, and pain met behind silk curtains, where pleasure was a weapon, loyalty was tested through flesh, and no one, man or woman, escaped untouched.